So it's been a couple of months since the release of Battle City Finals, and as of late, we haven't received a ban list in order to go ahead and fix up the format whatsoever. So I figured that why don't I go ahead and give it a go of my own. So essentially what I ended up doing is that I took notes from the old ban list Konami released in SpeedDuel's history alongside the ban list that we've had released in Duel Links as well to go ahead and try and justify some of the limitations and or restrictions that I ended up doing to each of the cards released in the new set. Of course, do keep in mind that these are all gonna be my personal opinions on my personalized ban list in order to make a much healthier version of SpeedDuels, at least for competitive play. And yes, that's another important thing that you should keep in mind, that this ban list is primarily catered for more competitive aspects of SpeedDuels. So if you disagree with any of my choices, then feel free to let me know why exactly you disagree with them and or what changes you would personally make. But this is more of like a guideline for people that want to go ahead and implement their own custom ban list or whatever reason. Alright then, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into it to take a look at what exactly we have hit on our custom ban list. And we're going to go ahead and begin with the limited section. Alright then, so here we are on the limited section, and as you can see, we only ended up hitting 3 cards here. Monster Reborn, Swords of Revealing Light, and of course, Quaking Mirror Force. Typically in SpeedDuels, whenever we get a card hit to 1 copy per deck, it's typically because it's a card that is extremely powerful and that pretty much every deck in the format is trying to use. And this kind of applies to all 3 of these cards. Monster Reborn is the best type of revival in all of SpeedDuels. Swords of Revealing Light is one of the best stall cards in all of SpeedDuels, and Quaking Mirror Force is pretty much just Book of Moon on steroids. So I figured that all 3 of these cards have a very much justified reason for being in the limited section, and it kind of feels unhealthy if a deck's able to run all 3 of these cards unrestricted in a deck. So I feel like having a player have to choose between these 3 cards feels pretty good in my opinion, but I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright then, so next up we have the semi-limited section, and this section is meant to go ahead and hit some of the cards that are considered more like consistency pieces for decks and or like power plays, essentially to try and go ahead and nerf the amount of times a card can be used in a certain deck while still allowing the deck to have access to that card, alongside also preventing you to play it alongside other very powerful cards in the format. So I figured that these cards in particular fit the bill for that very limitation. Alright then, so starting off we have Imperial Bower as a slight little slap in the wrist for the Joker Knight archetype for Yugi. This pretty much prevents Yugi from being able to play both Imperial Bower and Reinforcement of the Army in the same deck. And I feel like that's more than enough to go ahead and keep that deck in check. Next up we have Magic Karibo. I've realized that the Ever Faithful companion strategy is very popular in SpeedDuels right now. So I figured that a small little limitation to that deck with having Magic Karibo be semi-limited feels like more than fair in order to get that deck to feel a bit more balanced in the format. Continuing on, we have Drag Down into the Grave alongside Mirage of Nightmares both being semi-limited as well, just because one thing that I've noticed is that Konami tends to hit cards that are supposed to be super consistency pieces to 2. Cards that come as an example include Foolish Burial, Reinforcement of the Army, Allure Darkness. Hell, I believe at one point Metaverse was that 2? I might be wrong on that one though. But typically cards like those do get restricted to 2. Oh, another example was Union Hanger. So there you go. Cards like these seem to be restricted for that very reason. And you know what we're talking about, that Amazon's Call fits the same bill as well. Alright then, so now for Econ and Premature Burial. I feel like these 2 cards are perfectly suited for the semi-limited section. Enemy controllers saw a lot of time in the semi-limited section in Duel Links, and I feel like that was a really good restriction for it. As of recently, I believe it's currently put to 1 in Duel Links, and I feel like that's a bit too excessive for this card right now. While Premature Burial, I didn't want to give it the same treatment as Monster Reborn because I still do believe that decks should be able to experiment with a card like Premature Burial over Monster Reborn, so 2 seems like a more than fair, reasonable choice for this card. But give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright then, and finally we have the Limit 3 section, and for this section, this is supposed to be typically the most broad section for cards that see the most amount of play in certain decks, and or this section is also used in order to hit a deck a little bit more aggressively in order to prevent it from combining too many cards from the same archetype and or strategy. And that's what we ended up doing here. So starting off the list we have Amazoness Princess and Amazoness Onslaught in this Limit 3 section. I remember that in Duel Links, when the Amazoness deck got hit, Amazoness Onslaught got hit to I believe 1 and Princess got hit to 2, but that seemed a bit too aggressive in speed duels, at least in my opinion. So I figured that if a player wanted to go ahead and experiment with their ratios with the Onslaught and the Princesses at different quantities, that feels like more than fair enough. Also, there is some historical value to this as well, in speed duels at least, because at one point when Cyber Angel was super popular, the Machine Angel Ritual spell card alongside Ben 10 were both limited to 3 as a way to go ahead and restrict the deck a little bit. And I feel like that restriction was pretty healthy, at least at that time. So we went ahead and gave that same treatment to Amazoness. Moving on, we have Snipe Hunter, DD Warrior, and Tribe Infecting Virus that I went ahead and put to 3 for the same reason. So Snipe Hunter, DD Warrior, and Tribe Infecting Virus serve as very broad and very powerful monsters that any deck can pretty much use. Snipe Hunter kind of behaves like the New Age Breaker, the Magical Warrior, alongside Tribe Infecting Virus serving the same purpose as well. So I figured like a limitation to 3 feels very reasonable for these cards. As for DD Warrior, we have DD Warrior Lady, which is another card that's currently still at 3 in the format, so I figured that this version of this card should also be restricted, because believe it or not, this card's actually more searchable than DD Warrior Lady, because of the fact that it's searchable off Sangan, which is the Black Forest, and Warrior Lady of the Wasteland, I believe what's called. She's a recruiter monster that's able to special summon a level 4 Earth Warrior monster from the deck when it's destroyed. And hell, it's even searchable off Giant Rat. So for that very reason, I feel like this card, if it's left alone, it's gonna see a ton of play in warrior oriented decks that DD Warrior Lady can't see play because she's limited to 3 as well. So I figured that limitation to 3 seems more than reasonable enough. Up next, we have Mudora the Sword Oracle, which I want to go ahead and restrict the Ishizu deck a little bit as well. Limiting this card to 3 feels very reasonable for the very reason that we're going to prevent the deck from playing too many of the super powerful cards that are currently in the limited 3 section. Cards that come to mind are like Wall of Disruption, Book of Moons, cards like those. So that feels like more than enough to go ahead and restrict that deck. Also, we had some prior hits earlier in the video that also address that deck as well. And finally, we have Sol and Luna alongside Waboku. Waboku is one of those cards that I've noticed has ticked up in play a lot recently, and it gets played in a lot of very degenerate strategies that try to stall out the duel as long as possible to burn the opponent for an egregious amount of damage, and it's just very unfun to play against. So as a way to go ahead and address that deck that became popularized after the release of the SpeedDuel set, I went ahead and hit that there. And Sol and Luna, in my opinion, I think this is a kind of better version of Book of Moon. Those two cards do have their own values in their own decks, but nevertheless, Sol and Luna is a card that is incredibly powerful, so I figured that limiting it to 3 is a healthy way of addressing this card in the format. And it pretty much addresses other decks that use this card a lot in their own personal strategies. But in the comment section below, give me your thoughts. Do you like any of the changes that I ended up making? Are you planning to adapt my ban list and or adapt certain aspects that I did in this ban list? Of course, I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comment section below. But before I do go, I do want to go ahead and just talk to you guys about some honorable mentions of cards that didn't quite make the hit line for my ban list, in case you want to have other suggestions for a ban list of your own. Alright then, so some other honorable mentions for the ban list that didn't quite make the cut include cards like Maxi. I don't think Maxi has seen enough play in speed duels right now to go ahead and get restricted currently, just because the format isn't as fast to go ahead and special summon that much, and also we have a card in the format right now that deals with special summon heavy decks a lot better than a Maxi could ever do. And that of course being Fossil Dyna. Fossil Dyna is another honorable mention that I would potentially consider hitting in the ban list. To probably putting it to like 1 or 2 copies per deck in order to restrict the amount of times that players are able to see it during a duel. Maxi would probably be put to 3 or something like that if we were to hit it. Other cards that potentially come to mind that could potentially get hit include the Cataclysm card. It's a very powerful monster, especially for Earth-based strategies. We also had Necro Valley in order to go ahead and keep the Gravekeeper strategy in check. I don't think it's seen enough play in order to address it just yet, but nevertheless, it's something that comes to mind. We also do have Penguin Soldier, but I don't think Penguin Soldier is as oppressive as it could be, so we'll just leave it alone for now. But those are my honorable mentions. Alright guys, and with that, this pretty much concludes today's video. If you did end up enjoying today's video and would like to support me, then leaving a like and subscribe to the channel is the best way of doing so. I make tons of different speed dueling content, so if you're a fan of the format, then consider subscribing because I have plenty of stuff for you guys. Alright then, with that being said, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.